Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from the Legal Action Group, the Access to Justice organisation, that produces very, very important books for us as practitioners in court, and also general advice handbooks. The book I'm looking at today is the National Health Service Law and Practice title, which has just been published to coincide with the 70th anniversary of the National Health Service. It's been written by David Locke, Queen's Counsel, and Hannah Gibbs. Now, Elizabeth and I have discussed the book, and Elizabeth was the lead writer on this particular title for review. We've got the title for our review is this: Navigating Through the NHS Maze, a groundbreaking new practitioner guide from the Legal Action Group. Let's have a look at the book first of all anyway. Here it is. It's a heavy book, it's a paperback. You see, that's the front, and there's the spine, and then there's the back, and there's quite a lot of blurb, not the easiest to read. The book runs to a staggering 920 odd pages. The back of the book is the index, and that is by paragraph numbering, so you can find things fairly easily. It's very much the house style of LAG, the way that these books have been produced. If I go to the front of the book, there is the front of it itself, and you've then got you've got a number of people who've been involved with the book. Let me just mention their names now: Samantha, Broadfoot, Queen's Counsel; Fiona, Scolding, Queen's Counsel; Andrew Byass, Richard Clarke, Ben Fullbrook, Alistair and James Neill, and they all come from Landmark Chambers. The book itself, there's the basic blurb, and there's a nice little dedication which I'll leave for you to read there. Then after that we have a forward by Sir James MBE, who's just retiring as president of the Family Division. That is dated the 2nd of May 2018, so it's a very new book. Then there's a preface, which is very substantial, by the two main authors. And then in addition to that, you've got the list of all of the people who've assisted in the publication of this title. There's a large number of people involved. Then you've got the standard structure for the contents section, and running all the way through. Then you've got, in fact, there are a total of 21 chapters and an index. Then you've got the table of cases, and then after that a table of statutes, which you can see there. Then some statutory instruments, of course, as well. And then after that, I just zip through a lot of them. That's right, the table of European and international legislation. This is becoming very much a practice with most books, that we have that link into the European and international matters. And they are quite useful because whatever happens with Brexit, we're still going to be heavily involved for a long time to come. Then there's tables of guidance, which I think is very, very helpful, which talks about the various organisations linked and involved with the NHS. And then, as I said, the table of guidance goes on for some considerable time. And then after that, it gives you quite a lot of very detailed information. What I have found helpful are the abbreviations, which again are very useful. And then after the abbreviations, we then get to the actual meat of the book itself. Part 1, Introduction to the NHS. And you see there's a little mini index right at the beginning. Then we run into the very substantial, or rather more substantial index. And then after that we get into the body copy. It's paragraph numberings, which you can see at the side, there and there. And there are some footnotes, obviously, all the way through. Not very much, but there are some footnotes. You can see relevant statutes and so forth as we go through the whole book. Then when we come to the end, the final part of the book, chapter 21 is the final bit, and then after that you get to the index itself, which is on page 919. So you can see it's a very substantial book in its own right. And again, I'd like, as I say, to pay tribute to the Legal Action Group for producing this work, which I think is a very high quality publication. So what do we say about it? Well, we say this: the Legal Action Group once again has brought out an accessible and readable legal text, which, not before time, is accessible and as I say, readable, and it uncomplicates as much as possible a notoriously complicated area of law, namely that which pertains to the National Health Service. And under specific scrutiny are the legal structures and frameworks within the NHS and how it actually operates. It's often criticised but much loved, and arguably the largest employer in Europe. So the NHS spends over £120 billion per year of public money. Strange then, as the co-authors David Locke QC and Hannah Gibbs point out, that, quote, there is no existing text which explains how the legal rules of the NHS operate. Their sheer complexity is daunting in the extreme. And of course it is. It's a terrific portfolio to have as a government minister. And as I record this, we've just had a change of Secretary of State, with Mr. Hunt leaving and Mr. Hancock taking over. Now, leading a team of expert practitioners from landmark chambers, the two authors refer to one of the most complicated legal frameworks we've ever come across and express the hope that this book will act as a guide through the NHS maze. It does that, exactly. Appropriately enough, then, the publication of this pioneering legal text coincides with the 70th anniversary of the NHS and a highly significant contribution to legal literature it is. The point, of course, is made that the National Health Service is not a single entity. People often think it is, but it isn't. As this text reminds us, it operates through networks of different organisations, some public, some commercial, profit generating entities, delivering NHS services under contract. And these collectively employ some 1.7 million people. So it's a big employer. Against all of this, of course, the total budget for the NHS is an ongoing and incessant subject of political debate. And of course, I would point out, as many will, that it's basically a department where however much money you spend, you still could spend some more. And that's one of the difficulties we've had all the way through with the way in which the National Health Service has developed. And of course, it's the pride of this country and the greatest service really in the world that we have seen, as compared with every other country that has anything like a health service which is basically available to all. And frankly, that isn't something that's predominant anywhere else. Now, the stated aim of this volume, of about 1,000 pages, is to attempt to explain the legal structures of the NHS and how decisions are made in areas other than the treatment choices open to clinician and patient. Of course, the irony here is that when matters relating to treatment go right, the legal structures which support the delivery of the necessary clinical services rarely loom as important. And it's usually when something goes wrong that the structures upon which decisions are based come under the intense scrutiny from which legal entanglements all too often ensue. Now, as the subject is vast and the issues too broad to be discussed in detail here, it's sufficient to say that the book deals with such matters as, for example, clinical commissioning groups, public health, patient choice, GP practice management, dental services, complaints procedures, and of course much more. And particularly topical is the chapter on who can access National Health Service care charges for overseas visitors, and that's again a very substantial political issue. And with its lucid, plain English approach, we feel that the book is accessible to any and all practitioners, whether they're going to be lawyers or judges, and experienced or not. And that's the value, of course, of all of the Legal Action Group publications. And in addition, it offers a multitude of research references from cases, statutes and statutory instruments to European and international legislation. As I've indicated in many publications today, we are seeing the European element very clearly cross-referred to. And the footnoting we did find is extensive, and there is the very useful table of guidance right at the front, because if anybody's like I have been involved with the NHS, you will know that it's a very complicated and very, very big organisation, so the guidance is most welcome. Let me conclude with these remarks by saying that with the NHS under constant scrutiny, especially in this anniversary year, the publication of this book is very timely, and as practitioners will almost inevitably come up against the NHS and NHS related matters in the course of their careers, we think every practitioner should have a copy. And I think it's actually got a much wider applicability, this book, certainly within the organisation itself. Now the publication date is cited at 2018, and I'm recording this in the summer of 2018. This is the book itself, there it is again. As I say, I think it's a book which would find favour with a much larger group of people than just lawyers. That's the back. Just opening it in the middle. This is the Responsible Commissioner. This is chapter 13, and it's dealing specifically, I'll just get to the front of it. It's looking very specifically at the Responsible Commissioner in primary cases. You can see that's the sort of, right in the middle of the book, that's the sort of detail you have. It covers everything. It covers things like dental services, members of the armed forces, detained persons, and so forth. And what you've got is, apart from the index, you've then got a very useful introduction each time, again with the paragraph numbering, which you can see, and of course the footnoting at the bottom. And it runs through, and it is very heavy on detail, which of course is exactly what one wants, because a lot of matters today are very complicated. Well, thank you very much to David Locke QC and Hannah Gibbs and all at the Legal Action Group for this book and all the other work you do. We're very grateful to everybody because it just makes access to justice so much easier. Thank you. Bye-bye.